And here we go. We have liftoff.
Propulsion continues to be nominal.
RCPA chamber pressure looks good.
Traveling up. Roger, planet.
Water towers fly! Yes!
Tango down to nominal.
Fighting downside SPD off. Bring in SPD off. It's orange!
Orange 25! Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage.
What is it?
Put that in the big bag,
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
This methane will be igniting in the flare, correct?
Yikes. Keep that. We don't need any more of these.
Good evening. You are taking a live look right now at Space Launch Complex 40 at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida, where once again a Falcon 9 rocket is ready to launch more Starlink V2 mini internet satellites into orbit. I'm seeing all the 5x5s in chat, which means that you can hear us. Now, this is going to be a launch full of three-letter acronyms and initialisms. Now, why do I say that? Because right now we have Team MST. That is the Midnight Starlink team, first off. Second off, that also indicates who is with us tonight. I am the S in that. I am Sawyer Rosenstein, and I will be hosting the launch this evening as we go, hopefully, to a T0 in about 36 and a half minutes from now. The T portion of that would be Trevor. How's it going tonight, Trevor?
I am doing fantastic, and I also have to point out that my initials are TMS, so this is like many, many levels of craziness tonight.
It really is. And of course, as you mentioned, there's that third initial in there of M, and that is for Max out in the field tonight. Max, how's it going?
Good evening, everybody. These late night Starlinks do be hitting different.
Indeed they do, especially with the MST, the Midnight Starlink team here. Now, I did mention three-letter acronyms and initialisms. That's because behind the scenes, running the stream tonight, is KMR himself, Mr. Kevin Michael Reed, pushing the buttons and pulling all of the levers. So, at this point, we should be getting ready to begin fueling momentarily, which we will see some of the frost line going up the rocket. Now, before we begin, I know a lot of you are mentioning this. There is a lot of lightning going on. Before we go into the specifics of the mission, Max, what's with the lightning here, and is this, at the current moment, a weather constraint?
Well, the weather is concerning at best right now. There is a wind out of the southeast right now at about, I believe last time I checked, it was at about 10 knots, which should still be within mission constraints. But on top of that, there is a lot of cloud cover over us coming in from the Atlantic. The sea breeze is meeting stagnant air over the Florida coast. But the lightning you see out more toward the ocean, out over the Atlantic, is a storm system well out miles and miles or kilometers and kilometers away. At the moment, as it stands, Falcon 9, it should not be a concern because of its trajectory. So last I checked, weather is green.
There we go, because I
And
knew people were going to
just
be
as you
mentioning it
said
because it
that,
was quite bright.
SpaceX tweeted that all systems are looking good and weather is trending favorably for tonight's Falcon 9 launch. Propellant
Magical
mode
words.
underway.
Beautiful.
That is what we love to hear. So yes, the lightning that you see outside of the range of concern at the moment, so you'll see it, but no need to worry about it for now. So with that out of the way, let's actually get into this particular mission. Sure, it's another Starlink V2 mini launch, but there's always some usually fun, cool little details about it. Trevor, do you mind taking us through the mission tonight?
Yes, of course, and sadly, I don't know if there's anything super fun or special about tonight's launch. It's just very much another Starlink mission. So as Sawyer mentioned, we will be launching 22 Starlink V2 mini satellites into a 284 by 294 kilometer orbit, inclined 43 degrees, The satellites will then spend the coming months raising their orbit into the 530-kilometer circular orbit at 43 degrees. The booster supporting this mission is B1078-5. So it's one of the newer boosters in SpaceX's fleet, and it has previously launched the Crew 6, O3b Empower 3 and 4, Starlink Group 6-4, and Starlink Group 6-8. One somewhat interesting note is this booster actually has the second quickest average turnaround of any of SpaceX's boosters. To be fair, it hasn't flown that many times, but still a somewhat interesting fact. Following launch, the first stage will attempt landing on SpaceX's drone ship Just Read the Instructions, which was tugged downrange by Crosby Skipper. It is approximately 618 kilometers downrange. And that will mark the 152nd consecutive landing and 226th total landing. And then finally, the fairings will be attempted to be recovered as well tonight. We're sadly unsure if they are flight proven or not yet. And they will be attempted recovery by Doug, approximately 676 kilometers downrange.
It's really impressive seeing it. Just the other day, we saw in port at Port Canaveral on our Space Coast Live 24/7 cameras, they were doing a test of how they actually scoop them up once they've splashed back down into the water and then get them lifted up onto the boat, and then once they're in port from the boat onto a truck to be refurbished and fly again. It's absolutely unreal and really cool to see. I believe Gavin may have tweeted that, and there is a short in the works on that as well, as we take a look at the rocket right now from our cameras over at the port.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy that this year, if my stats off the top of my head are correct, over 90% of the payload fairings that SpaceX have flown have been flight proven.
It's absolutely just unreal. And I can say, in terms of just the pace at which they're reflying things, this will be the 60-second reflight of a booster this year. Keeping in mind, that's the total number of launches that they had in all of 2022. And they've already beat that since they've had some brand new boosters thrown in there. This will be the 66th launch for SpaceX this year, which sets a new record, beating their previous record of 65 set after the last Starlink launch, which I just find absolutely impressive. A reminder, if you have any questions, you could tag us at NASASpaceflight. No question is, too amateur, too experienced. We'll do the best we can for all of them. Here's one from Toaster Chip. And they say, asking for a friend, but still always good to go through here. What fuel does Falcon 9 use? Max, what are we loading up there as we speak?
So Falcon 9, the Block 5 and Block 4, and actually all variants of the Falcon 9 from previous times up till now, use a combination of RP1 or rocket propellant 1, which is a highly refined form of kerosene, and a blend of that and liquid oxygen, and they use that for both the first and the second stages.
There you go. Yes. As much as Starship is going to be great in terms of using the methane, right now it is RP1 and liquid oxygen / loxygen / LOX. And yes, again, rocket propellant 1, once again, refined form of kerosene. So it's not like you can load up your camping grill and then go load up Falcon 9 with any extra. We have gotten a crazy amount of support even since the scrub yesterday, of which they were originally going to try 4, but decided instead to push until tonight. We have 3 brand new Capcom members from that. Jeff Frishoff, thank you for becoming Capcom. Connor K, a Capcom member, and Joel, a Capcom member. Each of you now get access to the NSF Discord, full of some fantastic, awesome items in there. We've got behind-the-scenes pictures. There's all the different channels for spaceflight, gaming, food. I was in sports ball the other night when the quarterback of my New York Jets ended the season, but that's another story. As we continue to thank people with support here. Daniel Hamlin, thank you for becoming PadRat member. Maxence H becoming a Red Team member, and Robert Emmer, a PadRat member. We very much appreciate all the support. Here's an interesting question from Ren Pytome asking, I don't recall a Starlink flight being delayed by a wayward plane or boat. Have there been changes to the rules about wayward craft? So, Trevor, what's the deal in terms of the keep out for boats and planes anyway?
Yeah, so this ultimately comes down to the fact that the 45th range is extraordinarily good at their job because they've done this so many times. Uh, I also actually can't think of a time that a Starlink mission was delayed by a wayward plane and boat, and that's ultimately comes down to what the authorities do is they release these things called NOTAMs, Notice to Air Missions, and No Mars, Notice to Mariners, that tell people there's a rocket launch going on this day at this time. Do not be in this area. And then you see these going live as we get close to launch. And these are the same things, by the way, that you should pay attention to figure out when Starship may launch. DOS just did a video on that the other day. Selfless plug. So yeah, it really comes down to the 45th has done this a lot of times, and they're very good at clearing the range. They know exactly what needs to be cleared, how long it takes to clear. So a lot of the credit goes to them.
It does, yes. And for those in chat, I've seen it a couple days. NOTAM no longer means Notice to Airmen. That is the previous name for it. It has since been updated across all military official language to now become Notice to Air Missions. So I've seen that comment. It's not that we don't know what we're talking about, it's that the terminology has updated over the years. Let's see. Continuing along here, we had some other questions along with support. Musical Wolves asking, what's the average time between drone ship starting to head out and the launch itself? Max, as the one who's out there kind of seeing everything coming back in, about how often do these end up staying in port before they head back out?
It really depends on the cadence. So typically, thanks to our fleet cam and Gavin's amazing tweets, it seems that the drone ships and the support vessels all head out approximately 3 to 4 days, if sometimes 5 days before launch, depending on how far downrange they have to go, and about the same time to come back, depending on how rough the recovery or how rough the seas are in terms of the swell. Because I imagine, of course, it takes a lot more time to navigate through 8 or 9 foot swells out in the ocean than 1 or 2 foot. And that's actually what the most recent return support vessels had to deal with because of Hurricane Lee out in the Atlantic right now. They had to divert more south than they normally would, and then follow the Florida coast up to avoid the worst of the waves. So, but usually it's between 3 to 5 days before and after the mission that they go out to their positions and then come back.
Yeah, they've
I'll add
gotten
to
even
that.
faster. Go ahead.
Yeah, an interesting thing is, like Max said, on the East Coast, it's 3 to 4, 3 to 5 days, somewhere in there. But on the West Coast, the drone ship is actually slightly closer to the port, so it takes them like 2 to 3 days, which is why we're able to see quicker turnarounds on, of course, It's to Love You on the West Coast than we've seen on Just Read the Instructions and A Short Fall of Gravitas on the East Coast.
Right. And again, the fact that they've got all of these sources out on both sides and they're able to turn around and launch all this at this rate, at this pace, is absolutely fantastic. And that kind of goes along, I think, with a question here. It's more of an opinion question, but I think it's still relevant as we get to mid-September now. Rick Sorber asking, last year they wanted to launch 100 times for 2023. Do you think they can still do it? Max, I'll put it to you first, then Trevor.
I don't think they'll quite reach 100 this year, although I suspect they will get pretty close into the 90s, but not this year, unfortunately. However, for next year, who knows? SpaceX might double down, and they may very well go well into the 100. I cannot talk tonight. I swear. I'm so sorry. But they may get over 100 flights next year, probably into the 120s. That's my guess.
Official mosquitoes have taken over and are now controlling all of Max's ability to talk.
Oh dear Lord, please no.
I do want to point out the rocket is there in the middle. This is slightly zoomed out from what we usually show, but that's because we've been getting quite a bunch of lightning, and we want to make sure you can see some of it because it puts on quite a show, A, and B, the most important part at the moment is that it is not a weather constraint as we continue counting down. Trevor, your thoughts on 100 this year?
Yeah, so this is day 259 of the year, which is so we're about 70% of the way through 2023, which, side note, feels crazy. It feels like this year just started. And this will be SpaceX's 66th mission of the year. So at their current cadence, they'll be at 94 or 95 launches. I personally think it's unlikely that they make up those final 4 to 6 or 5 or 6 launches to reach the previously stated goal of 100. However, they're going to be very close, and I'm very confident that next year we will probably see over 100 launches. I don't think we'll see the 144 that Elon tweeted about, but I could maybe even see like 115 or 120 somewhere in there next year.
I agree. I think we'll hit 90 this year. At this rate, if they continue at the current pace, I can definitely see them hitting high 80s, low 90s. 100, I don't think it's possible. I may have to eat crow from the video that I did at the beginning of the year of can they reach 100 launches. But we'll
It
see.
did seem insane at the beginning of the year, and now it's like they'll be close. They may not reach it, but it'll be very close.
That's a good point. I mean, sure, we laugh, 100 launches. Obviously, we want that, and we're not getting it just yet. But the fact that we're so darn close to it, or that we have the ability to be so close, is unbelievable. I mean, as I was mentioning, we already beat last year's complete total of launches of Falcon. And here we are, that was completed in August. So there's still plenty of time for that. One thing that there isn't that much time for is a countdown to the liftoff itself. At this point, Stage 2, RP1, or Rocket Propellant 1, that's the refined kerosene, loading is underway and should be wrapping up very shortly. And the way that we know about that is because of a vent, but not just any vent, as we like to call it, the best vent, aka the T-minus 20-minute and 20-second vent. So as we anxiously anticipate that coming, Trevor, what is the T-minus 20-minute vent?
Is saying that it's the best vent not just enough?
Let's explain why it's the best event, because if you take a look at the right side of the rocket right now, you can actually see the vent beginning.
Yeah, there it is. No, that's a great question, Sawyer. So the way that Falcon 9 fueling sequence works is they load on the first stage from T-minus 35 minutes, both liquid oxygen and RP1. But since the second stage is substantially smaller, it's way quicker for them to load RP1. So what they do, and because RP1 is at room temperature, or I guess just below room temperature on Falcon 9, oh wow, massive lightning there. They load RP1 from T-minus 35 minutes until T-minus 22 minutes and 20 seconds, and then RP1 fueling load will be complete, and they use then the same line on the transporter rector to fill with liquid oxygen. So what that vent is them purging the line with nitrogen to cool it down and make sure that it's clear of RP1 before they start loading liquid oxygen at T-minus 16 minutes.
And what I find amazing there, as we took a quick look at Fleet Cam, you could see the 20-minute vent all the way from out there. I'm sure a lot of that has to do with the current humidity levels in the air around Florida that kind of lets it linger there and keeps it semi-stagnant in the air, so you get a good view of it around the vehicle. So that will go for about 4 minutes, and once that vent stops, that is usually good indication that the liquid oxygen, or LOX load, will begin on that second stage as well. Meanwhile, the propellant load is continuing still through all of this on the first stage booster. All right, I do want to thank people here still because we've been getting some insanely generous support. People have broken Jack. I think they're trying to break me now tonight, too. Bideford gifting 10 Red Team memberships. Thank you so much for that. And Ken Schaefer gifting 10 Red Team memberships. Holy cow. Extremely generous. Thank you, thank you. And if you did get one of those gifted memberships, please make sure to give them a thank you. I love the gifted memberships basically because of the fact that it gives people who might not otherwise have a chance the ability to experience some of the fantastic behind the scenes stuff that we can offer here. We also have Capcom members joining as well. Stephen Fairs, thank you for becoming Capcom member. And Stephen Hansen, a Capcom member as well. Genuinely appreciate all of those. Glenn Bounds as well with the $10 super chat. Jerry coming in with the super chat as well. No message on either of those, but greatly appreciated. And Musical Wolves, what's the go launch weather probability? Well, right now, despite the lightning, so far, so good.
As of the 13th of September at 1600 Zulu, the 45th said it was 65% go for launch.
And from the latest tweet from SpaceX, weather continues to trend in the, I guess, in the good direction. I'm not sure the exact wording to put that there.
It's trending in the right direction, as we like to say.
Thank you. Now, I think it's important to note that tonight will not be the only launch that we're celebrating from the Cape on September 15th. If we go back just 2 years ago, in the evening as well, the Inspiration 4 mission lifted off from Launch Complex 39A at the Kennedy Space Center. The mission carrying 4 civilians into space, one of the first all-civilian missions there, launching aboard a Crew Dragon capsule, and through all of it, raising over $250 million for St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital. So it's just an absolutely amazing mission. It included the first black pilot of the commercial spacecraft there. It included the first person with an internal prosthesis to fly into space. It just set so many records and just opened up space, I think, to so many more people. It showed that the average person who may not otherwise have thought they could go to space could, all while continuing to support charity and help cancer research and research against other diseases that affect children around the globe, and to allow them to be able to go to St. Jude and for the parents to not have to worry about paying for housing, food, anything like that. Max, you and I were both there for that launch. What do you remember?
Oh boy, was that already 2 years ago? I mean, to be completely honest with you, that still seems like yesterday because that was that was one of the most gorgeous and vibrant displays of that Falcon 9 has ever put on. They launched around 50 or so minutes after sunset, and because of the trajectory that Falcon 9 was taking to get to its orbit, they flew right back into the sunlight, and I believe it was right at stage separation. We had one of the most vibrant and clear and bright jellyfishes that I have ever seen from any launch here at the Cape before. And to this day, I think that is still in my top 5 favorite launches that I've personally seen. And my launch count now is at about 113. So, golly, it's so difficult to fathom that it was already 2 years ago.
Can't believe it either. Again, the fact that, like you said, that jellyfish was just stunning. It was really one of the first ones that portrayed the true power of the jellyfish right around sunset. I believe it took off shortly after sunset. It was absolutely beautiful. I remember just 2 things distinctly. One, running into, for those who know John Krause, Snap, as he was known for the mission as their photographer, running into him after the crew had loaded up into Falcon 9. He just came back to the press site, gave him a fist bump, because I remember way back in the day when he was a youngin', a teenager just starting off, and to see him do that made me so proud. And then in addition, personally, that was also when I found out that I was going to be part of the first ever zero gravity flight specifically for people with disabilities. And I found that was so appropriate with Haley Arsenault going up into space, who had survived cancer and had the internal prosthesis. That really, in my mind, just proved space is for everyone. Everyone should get that chance to go to space, and medical conditions should not be a deciding factor against it. So That's just my thought. And again, a huge thank you to everyone in the NASA spaceflight community during our live stream of that just continued to put in generous amounts of support. So really appreciate that. All right, let's continue back to this mission here as we are now about T-minus 13 minutes away from liftoff. Let's take a look at the next milestones that we can expect. The big one here is fueling continues now with stage 2 LOX load underway. As you can see, no more vent there. The next thing will be engine chill at about T-minus 7 minutes, where you start running propellant through the engines and get them ready to go as they're about to be blasted with super hot gas coming out the back of them in an attempt to, get to space. The strong back, which is holding the rocket, you can see that on the right, that will retract away ever so slightly at T-minus 4 minutes. Then at T-minus 1 minute or so is when the propellant tanks enter their flight pressurization. Falcon 9 enters startup, meaning the onboard computers take over. We should get the go for launch at T-minus 45 seconds, and that should be followed by engine ignition 3 seconds prior to lifting off. Now, I do want to point out, there is the transporter erector, like we talked about. There is that strong back retract on the right. There's a giant yellow something else kind of in the way there in addition to that. Max, what are we looking at dead ahead?
Yeah, so for those keen-eyed viewers, you might see that the view over to Slick 40 from the KSC tonight and on previous Starlink missions is beginning to change and evolve a little bit. So for those just joining or for those unaware, SpaceX has elected to construct a crew access tower at Space Launch Complex 40. And what we're seeing now, that big yellow crane is there to place all we think is going to be all 4 tower segments, and it is there to stack them over at Space Launch Complex 40. Right now, currently, there's only 1 segment over there, but we have a sneaking suspicion that the other 3 segments will be moving out towards Slick 40 in the very near future.
It's exciting to see the work out there. Again, that just opens up a whole second gateway to space, basically, and that allows you to do crew launches from 39A and 40, as well as cargo launches, too. All cargo launches to the space station used to be able to choose between Slick 40 and 39A, with the majority actually going out of Pad 40. That was also when the vehicle was laid on its side, though, for it to be loaded up with any late loads, as they call it, or last-minute things like live animals, fresh fruit, ice cream, things like that that could be perishable. Now, it's the same capsule, essentially, for crew and cargo, just without the people in the seats and things. So, you can use the crew access arm to easily load up those late-load payloads. So that is what we should be able to see now from Pad 40, so allow more flexibility. And a reminder that right now, Space Launch Complex 40 is the busiest launch pad in the world. So I think that's pretty impressive. And that will just allow for even more launches.
And it's also worth remembering that the last Dragon to fly from Slick 40 was the very last Dragon 1 capsule for CRS 20 back in March of 2020, I believe it was. It was the very last Dragon 1 to fly, not just from 40, but in general, before they moved on to Crew Dragon and Dragon 2 cargo.
March 7th, 2020. You are correct.
And that was my my first launch ever. I was down here with the NASA social people at the Kennedy Space Center. It was a wonderful time. But yeah, it'll be, gosh, I mean, by the time this tower is active and ready to be used, it'll be about 4 years in between Dragons flying from Slick 40. And going off of what you said, Sawyer, and this being the busiest launch complex in the world at the moment, the fact that they're squeezing in all of this rapid construction in this really tightly packed launch cadence is super impressive.
It really is. I don't know about you, but there are just so many launches now, especially out of the Cape, especially out of 40. I know it can sometimes be hard to keep up, and I gotta tell you, I just did a whole bunch of laundry today. I am running out of NSF shirts to wear for each of these individual launches. So you know what I need to do? That just means I need to go to shop.nasaspaceflight.com and get some more items, maybe from our launch entry and landing apparel that we've got here, and the collection that I love. It shows the exact entry profile here in terms of which engines are used on launch, hopefully all 9, followed by entry and landing, and that's even in the correct order for a mission like this landing on a drone ship. So yeah, I have only one color of the shirt. I'm going to need to maybe get another second or third color so I can keep wearing fresh NSF merch for all of this. Or maybe to avoid getting bitten by mosquitoes when I'm outside, get one of the hoodies there. And of course, the mug that I can fill up with RP1 and liquid oxygen, although actually, please don't, because it's not rated to those cold temperatures. What is rated to be really awesome, though, are the metal prints that we have as well. You can get those hanging up on your wall, and I love that one. 2 birds at the port. We've got our Falcon 9 there, and you've got some of the amazing wildlife that still just hangs around Port Canaveral, which, again, one of the busiest ports in the world as well, that just so happens to cover wildlife and cruise ships, and, oh yeah, boosters. All of this available at shop.nasaspaceflight.com. And I do want to point out, Max, what shirt are you wearing tonight?
I am actually wearing the launch entry and landing shirt in navy blue long sleeves because I'm an absolute sucker for long sleeves.
There you go.
So,
And I
so
have
it's
the
funny
navy
you
blue.
mentioned that shirt.
And I have navy blue and t-shirt. So there you go. As we actually hit a major milestone here at T-minus 7 minutes, at this point we are expecting engine chill to be underway. Again, that's kind of priming the 9 Merlin 1D engines ahead of the ignition itself. Here's an interesting question from D Space Guy, and I'm going to throw this one to you, Trevor. Do we have a count on how many landings per recovery ship while we're talking about launch entry landing?
Yes, very good question. So I'm gonna go by landing attempts. So of course, I Still Love You has had 78 landing attempts, and 7 of those were unsuccessful. So 71 on Of Course I Still Love You. Between both, just read the instructions. Keep in mind, right, there's the original Marmac 300, and then later there's Marmac 303, which is one that they still use. There have been 64 landing attempts, 3 of which were unsuccessful. And then on a shortfall of Gravitas, there have been 45 landing attempts, 0 of which were unsuccessful. On LZ1, 29 landings, 1 unsuccessful landing. LZ2 has had 7 landings, 0 unsuccessful. And LZ4 has had 12, all of which were successful as well.
And there you go, dropping the facts there. Appreciate it. We also have people dropping the support here too, which is appreciated. Roland Hines just saying, "Hi, NASA Spaceflight." Hi, Roland Hines. Thank you for the super chat. Let's see. Stephen Farr is saying, "We can vent if we want to. You can leave your friends behind." Because if you don't, well, it kind of skips a little bit of the rhyme scheme there. But if they don't vent, then there ain't no friend of mine. I don't even know if Adrian would get that reference, just saying.
I got it. I actually like that song.
Yes, and I'm sure I just got us a copyright claim. And Chris Bilberry asking, how many Falcon 9s is there that are flight ready and flight proven?
Okay.
I know we've got quite a bunch.
Flight proven, I believe, is 18. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Yeah, 18. Then it looks like there are 2, or sorry, I think it's 17. Trying to count is really hard.
That's right. While you're doing that, I know Max is about to be flight proven again, so we will let you go and cover the launch here and get us the fantastic views, and good luck, sir.
That's the first time anyone's ever said I'm flight proven. So, but I'll take it. Thank you, gentlemen.
How many
I'll see
launches
you on
have
the
you
other
seen?
side.
That's
Oh
flight
boy.
proven.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. All right, gentlemen. I'll see you on the other side.
All right. Fair seas, sir.
All right, thank you for that distraction because I was able to count 17 flight proven boosters in the fleet that are active. Then there are 2 Falcon Heavy side core or center cores that have not flown yet, plus an additional 2 or 3 that are at McGregor for testing or being transported to the Cape. So on the order of 25 total boosters.
I like that. Many of you are unable to support monetarily, but A, just you watching first off means a lot, and second off, so does liking, because it tells YouTube, hey, some other space geeks out there might actually enjoy this, or some other people might want to see this, so it helps spread it around with our favorite algorithm. So appreciate everyone out there for getting us all those likes as well. All right, T minus as we pass 3.5 minutes. At this point, the strong back, has slightly retracted. You can kind of even see it from that angle. That is that giant metal structure there up against the rocket. That has all the fuel lines and everything, as well as providing power and air conditioning and all of that for the satellite inside the payload fairing. It only leans back a few degrees, but at T0, it will throw back to be completely out of the way ahead of liftoff there. And you can see all of that frost and the venting there, all of that, again, for those who aren't used to it, completely normal. And if you look really carefully, by the way, when we see some of those SpaceX views, you can actually see a couple of tower segments stacked for that crew tower.
And what's exciting to me in this view right now, we can see that these fairing halves are in fact flight proven.
Yes. We are getting confirmation. Stage 1 LOX load is complete. That is the liquid oxygen completely loaded into the first stage. All that's left is for it to finish loading the RP1, Rocket Propellant 1, which is a refined form of kerosene that is used as the additional fuel to go with the oxidizer. We are coming up now on T-minus 2 minutes. The main thing that we're especially going to be looking out for now is one final vent coming out of the side of the vehicle. That'll be a good indication as well that fuel loading is complete. And then again, at T-minus 1 minute, that is when the flight tanks will pressurize to their final flight pressure. And at T-minus 1 minute as well, that is when the onboard computer takes control of Falcon 9, or as it's officially known, Falcon 9 entering startup. Those are two big milestones. At that point, it is the terminal count, as it's known. We have confirmation now stage 2 LOX load is complete. That is the liquid oxygen again. It's the same propellants and oxidizers for both the first and second stage there. Again, we should be getting to that tank pressurization and Falcon 9 entering startup in the next 5 seconds or so. They then have about 15 to 20 seconds in mission control to look over everything and make sure that weather and all of their final items are go for launch, and we should get an official confirmation from that launch director at about T-minus 45 to 40 seconds, although we will get it on a slight delay. So we are now in startup. We have confirmation of that. We should be waiting now for the go for launch from the launch director. And I see, there we go. We have the go for launch as we approach 30 seconds and counting. Now a reminder, you hear us blabbing now, we will be quiet at liftoff. You will not hear the sound immediately. That is not us muting the audio or trying to fake anything out. That's just how long it takes for the sound to get to our microphones. So hang tight once we get to T0, as we now approach T-minus 10 seconds. 8, 7, 6, 5. Keep an eye out for a green flash at the base of the rocket now, which will signal the engine ignition. We have engine ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of Falcon 9 and Starlink 6-16. Go, Internet satellites V2. Go. I love when we see it punch into the clouds like that. Absolutely beautiful. Coming up on T+1 minute into flight. The next thing, in about 10 seconds, the vehicle should be experiencing max Q. That is the maximum aerodynamic forces that will be pressing down on the vehicle during flight, as we get a quick look here from the onboard camera provided by SpaceX. You can still hear a little bit of that rumble from our cameras now, as we're approaching minute 30 seconds into flight. At this point, you can start to see the engines plumes spread out as the atmosphere gets thinner. In fact, you can even start to count each of the 9 Merlin 1D engines on that first stage. And now we are less than a minute away from a couple events in rapid succession. So there's a couple of things that we're going to want to keep an eye on here momentarily. That is MECO, which will be main engine cutoff. That will be shutdown of those 9 Merlin 1D engines, followed a few seconds later by stage separation. So the first and second stages will separate, followed again very shortly thereafter by SES-1, or second engine start 1, when the Merlin vacuum engine ignites in space, followed about 20 seconds after that by the payload fairing separation. So a lot of items to keep an eye out for, and all of those should be happening within the next 10 or 15 seconds. A reminder, our clock is in real time. SpaceX's video feed is on a slight delay, hence why the clocks are just a little bit different. Standing by now, we have MECO, main engine cutoff. We have stage separation. And wow, look at the Earth behind that second stage there. Ignition of the second stage. That is second engine startup, and the Merlin vacuum engine ignites. The stiffener ring that's kind of held its shape up to this point is broken away, and now the grid fins will come out, and I love this view as they interact with the atmosphere on the left side of your screen there. In just a few seconds, we should also see payload fairing separation. That's the clamshell halves that have been protecting the satellites in Earth's atmosphere, and now that it's out of the atmosphere, they fall away, and those will splash down into the ocean to be recovered and flown again. Trevor, these views don't get old.
No, they really don't. And this is what, the 105th dedicated Starlink mission or something like that, and they're still quite exciting.
Yeah. Again, the constellation that they're building is amazing, but those views, again, when you can see the lights of the Earth behind the second stage, or the grid fins especially interacting with the upper atmosphere on that first stage, some of my favorites. Now, one thing I like to point out at this point, if you look in the bottom left of your screen, you can see the telemetry coming in from that first stage. You'll notice that the speed is going down, meanwhile the altitude is continuing to go up. We are waiting for that altitude to stop climbing and for the speed to actually increase again. At that point, that means that the booster has reached what's called apogee. That is the highest point in its orbit. So it basically kind of just hangs there for a little bit, and then once it's over the hump like you are on a roller coaster, that's when it picks up speed, picks up G's, and starts decreasing in altitude. So we'll keep an eye out for that.
This is a great time for the calculus lesson that local on a continuous function, local extrema, happen at critical points, which is why the speed looks stationary. The derivative is 0.
I'm sure that's English, but at 11:45 Eastern, it takes a second to figure that out. But yes, as you can see, the altitude is decreasing while the speed is increasing. That will continue to happen until the entry burn. The entry burn is set to come up in just a few minutes, approximately 6 minutes and 8 seconds into flight, so about a minute from now. Trevor, how exactly does the entry burn slow the vehicle down? Because I love this part.
Yeah, so as we talked about earlier with our awesome merch, for the entry burn on this mission, 3 engines will ignite. So the center E9 engine will ignite first, and then the outer engines will ignite afterward, E1 and E5. And with those 3 engines, it will basically use the exhaust of the vehicle to protect the vehicle from the heat of reentry during that portion. And then, of course, during this time as well, there is some deceleration of the vehicle, and you'll see that the speed will decrease quite substantially. But it's literally fighting fire with fire, which is one of my favorite facts about Falcon 9.
I love it. And how do you know which engines ignite during this one? Well, it's almost like you can get the shirt at shop.nasaspaceflight.com that we teased 15 minutes ago. Sorry, shameless plugging always. We should be coming up with that entry burn now, the next 5 to 10 seconds or so. You can see the cold gas thrusters there basically settling the fuel tanks ahead of the ignition, which we now have. And as always, the colors are beautiful. That's kind of what Max and I saw a little bit with the same kind of colors with the jellyfish from Inspiration 4 just 2 years ago. It's approximately 20-second burn. It may be more or less given the altitude. And there we go. That is completed. And if you ever wondered why Falcon 9 boosters come back so sooty, that is why. RP1 is a carbon-based fuel, and it's, as you mentioned, fighting fire with fire, flying through its own flames and exhaust cloud. It's going to deposit some of that soot right on our booster here.
And just for everyone who complained about me talking about calculus, I got yelled at in the back channel as well. You're not alone.
Yeah. These launches do be hitting different at this hour, but math do be hitting different at every hour. At this point now, we are coming up on less than a minute or so from that first stage landing burn beginning. Now, it's important to note, sometimes SECO 1 or second engine cutoff happens before the landing. In this case, the landing completes first. So the landing burn will begin. It will slow itself down to land, hopefully, on just read the instructions, followed a few seconds later by the shutdown of that Merlin vacuum engine on the right side of your screen there. So we will stand by for that happening in the next 15 seconds or so.
It's worth noting, after SECO 1, there is another burn tonight. SES 2 is 54 minutes and 1 second after launch, and there we can see start of the entry burn.
There's the landing burn, yes.
Landing burn, sorry.
You could see the grid fins moving. That's helping to steer it now that it's in the thicker atmosphere. And in fact, you could see the drone ship right below it.
There it is.
We should have landing leg deploy, and there it is. And touchdown! Another successful landing for SpaceX. Unbelievable as they continue to add to this vehicle now, getting its Dash 6, if I recall correctly.
That is correct, and that is SpaceX's 226th booster landing and 152nd consecutive landing.
Unbelievable. That's still impressive to me at this point. What's also impressive always is the launch itself. Max, how was that?
I gotta tell you what, Sawyer, I am itching to get to some of the photos that I took, because a couple of my colleagues next to me got absolute bangers as it was going right into the cloud layer. I don't know if our cameras picked it up, but it was beginning to go transonic right as it went into the cloud layer. And the images from my colleague next to me are absolutely phenomenal. So I'm hoping mine turn out the same way. But I may have gone too dark. But I guess we'll see. For the launch itself, I mean, need I say more? It never gets old. The wind's calmed down a little bit, although it is still a bit breezy. But the VAB, even with the wind blowing toward it and potentially obstructing the sound back toward us a little bit, it was still squealing very, very loudly. And then, I don't get used to that. It's still such a unique and pungent sound, I guess you could say. These night launches are just absolutely spectacular. They never do get old.
It's very distinctive. It hits you in the back. You kind of know it's going to be there, but it's how loud, how much, is it really going to be there? And then, boom, you hear the squeal, and it always puts a smile on my face every single time I hear that squeal. And that's in addition to the smile I already have from watching the launch. Now,
absolutely.
Talking about photos, speaking of photos, Julia Bergeron was also out in the field tonight taking some snapshots for us. And here you go, exclusively first on the stream. This was Julia's view of the launch. And as Max was talking about there, punching through the clouds, making for that gorgeous view there. Absolutely another fantastic shot from Julia. Then again, I don't ever think I've seen a non-fantastic shot from her. Always with the W's, as we like to say.
I like that there's a dog in it, too. It's so cool that there's the family, the dog, and Falcon 9 in the background.
Yes. It kind of also shows the excitement a little bit of the people moving. And if I can see that correctly, it almost looks like two people that have their arms around each other.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about a sweet moment captured for eternity there. Getting to see a launch. You've got the family, you've got the dog, someone you care for in your arms. and just getting to see science and beauty and art all in one. For those wondering, I am still single and available. Anyway, I do want to thank some support that came through here tonight. Ken, thank you very much for getting an item here from the store for himself and potentially for somebody else that I won't mention. Apocalypse Cow, thank you for gifting 5 Red Team memberships. Stephen Fairs, thank you for gifting a Red Team membership. N-Flight Entertainment, time to rock and roll. Rock and roll program, more like it. There you go, first pun of the night.
That's why tonight's launch was so much fun. We didn't have to deal with any of your puns yet.
Ouch.
Burn.
Just kidding. I love them, Sawyer.
Thank you. Stephen Fairs, like we were talking about there, the glow from the fins, great example of an atmospheric plasma. As a plasma engineer, I love launches to see that. Absolutely. Hill Street Blues, thank you for the support. And sorry, I'm just a happy, cheery person. But we will always remain silent during the launch. Tony Bruno, not Tori Bruno, Tony Bruno coming in with the super chat saying, sick. Happy Space asking, what's the update on second Starship launch? Love you guys. Thanks for all the streams. Soon, TM. And Benjamin Weller coming in here. Does Falcon 9 have protection against lightning? May have to use the 4 towers command to get a good answer to that one. But yes, those 4 lightning towers. If you haven't, it's become a bit of a running joke, but also an informational video in there. Speaking of informational videos, we have plenty of other ones on this channel that you should totally check out as we wrap up here tonight. The Starlink Midnight team continuing to burn the oil as Falcon 9 burns the T-Teb. So thank you for joining us here tonight. Max Evans from the field.
Yes, sir. Sorry, I'm kind of distracted right now trying to get my images up. But yes, of course. Always happy to be here, and thank you everyone for joining us.
Yes, and his socials are on the screen. Keep an eye out on that to see what shots he's able to get. Thank you as well for joining us, Trevor Sesnick.
Yes, of course. I hope I didn't bore too many people with my midnight calculus lesson.
Hey, anyone that needed a little sleep instead of Bob Ross, you do listen to calculus, that's all. And thank you as well to Kevin Michael Reed, pushing the buttons, pulling the levers, doing all of the fantastic work behind the scenes to bring all of this to you. And a shout out to my mother, who was in chat as well tonight. Whoever gifted her the membership, thank you. I am very appreciative of that and love you. I have been Sawyer Rosenstein, and I don't know about you guys, but what do you say? You want to do this again soon? Another late night Starlink launch?
You know, these late night Starlinks do be hitting different, and if you're not down, get out.
There you go. The next one is scheduled for approximately September 19th. So we will bring you all of those launches live right here. So if you aren't already, subscribe. That way you know when those next launches happen and when they do be hitting different. On that note, thank you everyone for joining us this evening. We have 24/7 coverage still of the Kennedy Space Center in Cape Canaveral over on Space Coast Live. Hopefully you'll go enjoy that or check out one of our other videos. But we are about to head to sleep, I think. So go Starlink, go.
And here we go. We have liftoff.
Propulsion continues to be nominal.
RCPA chamber pressure looks good.
Traveling up. Roger, planet.
Water towers fly! Yes! Tango down to nominal.
Fighting downside SPD off. Bring in SPD off. It's orange! Orange 45!
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Décollage.
Look at this!
Put that in the big bag, Eagle.
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
This methane will be igniting with the flare, correct?
Yikes. You good? We don't need any more of these.